Okay, let's go ahead and get started. As people start trickling in, we'll kind of go through this. I appreciate you all taking the time to listen to me. My name is Paul Wagner, and I just wanted to share a little bit about my background, uh, my experience, and more importantly, leave you with a bunch of resources that can help you in your journey. I mean, this has been an amazing conference. It's something that I wish I would have been able to know about and attend as I was transitioning 3 years ago. So it was really a struggle to find the information that I needed to help me along the way. And really, it's just one pathway. So this is the way as a question mark. What my experience, what my journey was, is going to be completely different than anybody else's. And it's really important to find your path because what works for one may not work for another. The other part of it is connecting, learning from other people's journeys and seeing what you can take from them. It's kind of like leadership. And how do we find that information? So this is kind of where we're going to go. The background, what is this straight road? This is what everybody kind of seeks as they're getting out of the military. They want that one pathway and they want it to be well defined. They want it to be well lit. You can kind of see as this kind of picture goes into the background there that it gets a little cloudier. It gets a little hazier. You can't know the future. If we could, we would have bought Bitcoin when it was pennies on the dollar kind of thing and be rich and not have to deal with journey and transition and all that kind of stuff. So this is kind of what we're going to go over as we travel down this path. So this image really speaks to me because it's been really a winding journey as I'm going through to find my path. And honestly, 3 years after transitioning, I don't even know if I'm on the right path or not. It's my current path, but it could change. Something else could come up. A new opportunity that speaks to me could be what's going on. So a little bit about myself. So I grew up in the rural Midwest, really lower middle class, maybe upper lower class. I don't know. It was kind of weird. In the winters, we would hope that we have heat, and that sometimes became a challenge, or going into debt just to be able to pay the gas bill. And I didn't live on a farm, but I worked on a dairy farm. And then later in life, I worked in the restaurant industry, a steakhouse. And I guess you could kind of say that's kind of a circle of life kind of thing. So fed the cows, milked the cows, and then, well, eat the cows, I guess, as you're going along, or serve the cows, however it is. But as I was growing up, I wasn't really the best student. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I could get through the stuff. I'd be talking to people about their homework and trying to figure it out. I missed a lot of school in high school and usually just worked. Okay, that was either to pay the bills or help out or spend it on stupid things. So as I went through, there became a point in my life, it was actually after a car accident. I'm like, what am I doing? This isn't the way. So I joined the Army. I had plenty of family that did it. Couldn't afford to go to college and really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I didn't want to go down that path. I didn't want to take that. And then once I got into the Army, that was really another winding path. I started off in the infantry, spent the first 12 years of my military career in the infantry and recruiting for a stint there. I finally made it to E7 before commissioning, and I became a signal officer. Then just before commissioning, I was going to get out at the 10-year mark, and that was in 2008. So kind of like the COVID situation, 2008 was a terrible time to try to get out of the Army, a very secure job, trying to find the way of what was going on. There was the housing market, there was the financial crisis, there were all of these things. And I came out of it thinking, well, I've got my MBA, I've got 10 years of experience, I'm an Army person. People are going to hire me. I was pretty ignorant at that point. So what ended up happening, I was a single parent at the time with orders to Korea. I didn't know how that was going to work. Where was my son going to stay? What was I going to be able to do? The best job offer I got was a manager at a Kroger grocery store, and that was a $20,000 pay cut. So at that point, I realized a couple of different things that were going along. One, I need marketable skill set. The infantry and combat arms, it was probably the best experience I had in my life. However, it doesn't really translate well into a marketable skill set. I also realized that education wasn't enough. Just because I had a certification, I had a bachelor's degree, I had a master's degree, that wasn't it. You have to be able to market yourself and figure out what's going on. Just because my resume looks really good, that doesn't really matter. You need to find the path. The other part is I needed to plan for the future. So I was getting out. Like I said, it was a single parent chapter kind of situation where things were not looking very well. I didn't have a ton of money saved up. So getting out, it was, if I don't make the same amount of money that I am now, I'm going to run into some serious issues. So how do I leverage my skills, or am I mortgaging my future, if you will, to try to make a change now? And then the final thing was making the best of what is perceived as a negative situation. Being a single parent, going to Korea, being alone, what was my son going to be doing at the time? was miserable for me. I was like, why me? And that was the question that I've asked multiple times in my life and career, is like, why is this happening to me? Why can't I just get this opportunity? Well, in retrospect, I mean, going to Korea was the best situation ever. Personally, financially, career-wise, I was selected for officer candidate school at this time, transitioned into communications, that signal officer piece, and those are marketable skills. So what I want you to take away from that fact is just, it may seem like a negative situation currently as we're going through the dark times. It's always challenging and it's easy to get depressed, but try to look for the future, or try to identify those good things in your life that are there now. Hold on to those as you're going forward. So then as I transition, okay, last assignment was Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Again, why me, right? Like what is Fort Huachuca, Arizona going to do for that? But it created an opportunity that never would have been there. So the University of Arizona was offering a cyber warfare. I'm like, what is this cool thing? I get to go hacking. That's awesome. And cyber defense. Okay, I get to protect things. And it was a pilot course free for the military. So I ended up taking those courses. And it was during those courses that I was like literally walking out of class one night, and the instructor, who happened to be the program director for the cyber program, kind of cornered me in the parking lot and said, hey, have you ever thought about teaching? And I'm like, do I pull out the pepper spray now? What do I do here? This is awkward. Okay. So, but it was an opportunity, and I was presented with an opportunity at that time. And really, I had thought about teaching. I thought about going into like JROTC, kind of being tied, because mentoring and that kind of relationship building is really what I was looking for in life. But teaching for a university, me? Why me? That doesn't seem right. So found out I was about 18 months from retirement at that point, and I was not qualified for that job. Okay, so that's one of the things that we face too, is as we're making this transitioning journey, that am I qualified? Who knows? We question ourselves, but what are you doing to kind of fill those skills gaps to be more marketable? So I ended up enrolling in a master's in cybersecurity through Liberty University, and that was a requirement. You had to have a master's degree and at least 18 credits in the content area you wanted to teach. The other part of it is, if I didn't go teach for the university, I always felt that I needed some kind of a degree that was aligned with that signal officer skill set. And you'll see in a couple of slides, like what my winding journey through education was. The other piece of it is SkillBridge. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a couple slides, but it was really that opportunity for building a new curriculum. So I said, hey, what does Fort Huachuca have? Well, they don't have anything. Well, can I go work for the university? They're like, well, I guess. I don't know. What do you mean by that? So we figured it out, and I ended up building a couple of courses, did some curriculum development, led to an interview for a faculty position, got hired for that. And then after about a year, I was interviewed to be an administrator. And I was selected for that as well. So timing was critical. But the other part that was critical is I was willing to do what was necessary to check those blocks to make sure that that opportunity could have been realized. And I think that's something that we forget as well. And then the last thing on here, I've always felt this, I needed more. Okay. We'll talk about imposter syndrome here in a little bit, but I didn't feel like I was worthy enough. I needed to have that street cred, if you will, going through this whole process. So LinkedIn connection came up, said something about this virtual chief information security officer. I'm like, well, what is that thing? I don't even get it. But I wanted that relevant experience. So connected with the person, said, hey, I don't know if I'm qualified or not. They're like, no, you're qualified. You're good. So now I kind of do some consulting. It's very small, like 5-10 hours a week or a month. But I work with like small to medium businesses, high net worth clients. And what it's really is that connecting, that consulting, that kind of trying to grow their organization as they go forward. So it was another opportunity that kind of presented itself. So here you can see a list of all these schools. And these next two slides are not about Paul. It's really about these things that you can see here in the parentheses. I talk about other people's money as much as possible because, one, it's expensive to get a degree. It's expensive to get a certification. How can I have somebody else pay for that information, pay for that experience, pay for that certification? So as you go through here, the only thing that I paid for is because the Army already paid for my MBA. So when I want to do this, that was self-funded. You see this PhD in cyber defense. I'm currently a candidate for that. But I'm using Chapter 35 benefits. And those are because my wife is retired military. She's 100% disabled. It's another benefit that I found out that was there. You're going to hear some recurring themes through this talk is that, one, other people's money, understand your own money, but use the benefits that are available. Okay. There's so many things out there that people just don't take advantage of. And this timeline for certifications is important, and timing and how you're working ahead is that. But I didn't know what it was going to be coming from a communications officer. I didn't know what it was. I listened to a lot of great talks, and a lot of people like a scary thing is a major with a hammer or an officer that's trying to push a button. While that is true, there's also the piece of, well, I want to be more technically proficient. I want to know what my soldiers are saying. So how do I do that? Then there's that imposter syndrome thing again. It's like, well, if I'm going to be leading these people, shouldn't I at least understand the basics of what's going on? So on the left, you see these Army things, the A+, Net+, Sec+ kind of stuff. That's really my journey starting in. I just wanted to start checking some blocks. Towards the end of my career, looked at CASP, CEH, and the CISSP. Those were really my transitioning times. And then the rest were completed after transitioning. So that first SANS course, GMON, Continuous Security Monitoring, was completed in September of 2019. So that's a ton of effort that was put in, but it's because I didn't feel like I was worthwhile. Okay, I'm still working on that, if you will. But you see a lot of these different things. So these beta tests, I've seen a couple of people. Tom just put it out on his LinkedIn that he did Pen Test Plus as part of the beta. It's $50. Okay, it's one of those things where you can get an opportunity to do that. Now, are certifications the end all be all? No, but they build a skill set. They build some knowledge. They build common vocabulary so that as you're communicating, you can work with that kind of stuff. The other piece is this veterans, got it spelled out someplace else, veteran, VRNE. We'll cover what it is here in a second. Veteranness, readiness, and employment. So they ended up paying for my SANS incident response. You have to have some kind of disability that was related back to your military service, but that's 4 SANS certifications and the training, and you end up with like a graduate certificate in incident response. Huge benefit. I've seen some people, and they're trying to get away from this, but I've seen people get their medical degree, like doctor degree, PhDs, law school. There's so many things that this can pay for. And it's not even just about education. If you wanted to go be a truck driver, go be a truck driver, and they'll send you to that training and allow you to reskill into something that's more conducive. The other part, as you're transitioning out of the military, is cybersecurity the way that you want to go? Well, it's another one of those high stress, or can be one of those high stress jobs. You could be working long hours. Working in a SOC is going to be a challenge. So all in all, what this is trying to say is this kind of the bottom piece. Of all of these things, you kind of see the breakdown, but I probably spent about $5,000 for all of this, especially the SANS when you're talking about $8,000 a class. It's about $100,000 worth of training. Spend other people's money, okay? The last piece is this self-studying. I'm not a huge fan of boot camps. They have their purpose, and some people learn differently, but figure out how you learn, figure out what that's going to happen and how things are going to adjust, and figure that out. And then the last piece is family. There's training that's available. I'll cover this again later, but your family is eligible for some of these benefits. You're not the only person that's transitioning. So as we go through, I ended up asking a lot of questions. It's like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? I originally thought 4 years and done. I had this, I'm gonna be a doctor when I get out, and all of these crazy life dreams. But life happened. I ended up getting married. I had a kid. 9/11 happened right after, well, probably within 2-3 years of me getting in. The world changed. So that was a significant event. So what was I going to do? I ended up staying in. It was just another term. I'll get out after this next contract. Well, I also mentioned that I was going to get out at the 10-year mark. Well, it really depends. So when do you get out? You don't know. It could be, I am done in 4 years. Well, then you need to start figuring that out. You could spend 30 years in your career and figure that out as well. So we're always asking these questions. Do I stay or do I go? What is the timeline? Am I getting chaptered? Which is kind of one of those significant emotional events. And some people go through that. It's just something that happened. Did we learn from that lesson? Am I ETSing? So you kind of know when the end of this journey is going to be and when the next journey begins. Am I retiring? Okay, now you got a little bit more of a focus time, but you need to figure that out. And then what do I want to do? Okay, I'm still trying to figure it out. I mean, I love my job that I currently have, but the next opportunity may be around the corner. Did I want to go work for a startup? Did I want to go work for a consulting company? I didn't really want to work for the government anymore, but here I am working for the state government. So what do I want to do and who do I want to work for? How much do I want to make? That is a huge thing, and you need to come to grasp with budgeting. And I kind of harp on this because I've seen too many soldiers get out thinking, well, I'm going to make $100,000 a year. Well, maybe, but did you set yourself up for that job? Are you making $100,000 a year in San Francisco, where a lot of your paycheck is going to be going towards rent and very high rent? Or are you going to be stuck commuting probably 2 to 4 hours a day, depending on where you're at, because you want to afford to live in those places? So you need to be able to prepare yourself and understand that there's a huge difference between how much you make in the military and how much you're going to make when you get out. And not the dollar sign that what you're going to get. It's what you're going to take home. Where do you want to live? Is it currently where you're transitioning from? Is it your hometown? Is it some place you've always dreamed of living and working? Maybe it was your best assignment as you were traveling around the country and the world. Who knows? But there's some significant differences of living on the East Coast versus the West Coast, living in the Midwest, major cities versus not. So there's a lot of different things that are there. Do I want a leader? Do I want to follow? That's another huge thing. If you're in a leadership role now, okay, that might be one of those things where you think that's your natural gravitation to go down that path. I will tell you that's how I found myself. I went into this job and I'm like, well, I liked being a leader in the military because I had authority. I had the ability to enact change. My current administrator role, I don't have a lot of that authority and I don't like it. So I want to go back to be a follower. I'll just do my job and I'll lead from a different type of standpoint. Do I have a support system? Where is that at? And it could be with your home, with your family, all of those different things, but you need to figure out where that is, because once you transition from the military, a lot of those support systems that you relied on and you didn't even think about it may be gone. So you need to figure out, how do I replace that? People take all of the benefits that the military has for granted, and they're like, well, no, they'll take care of me. Yeah, you will always have a place to live. You will always have food. There's always somebody taking care of you, even when you're like, why is my NCO or my officer always breathing down my back? It's none of their business. What are they doing that? You're going to realize that once nobody cares for you, once you get out, it can be a very isolating experience for you. And then the last thing is, what are the skills? What do I have? Taking a self-inventory, figuring out what that is, but then figuring out what you need to do. How do I need to go? Is that a certification? Is that taking like coding classes or whatever it may be? And these are just a few. I mean, the questions are out there and you're always going to be faced with that. So you need to really figure out, how do you answer those questions and what are the resources? And when you're transitioning, start today. Even if you just signed your contract, you just got out of basic training and you just started your job, you need to be looking and preparing yourself for that next phase. What is that going to look like? And each service is different. So like at 24 months, retirees, at least in the Army, can start their transition process. For others, it's no earlier than 18 months. So you need to understand what that timeline is, because if you wait till the 30-day mark, it's going to be stressful. And preparation is going to lead or reduce, or should reduce, some of that anxiety as you're going forward. So at 24 months, figure out what you can and can't do. Is that enrolling in school? Is that starting your budget? Is that figuring out what's going on? At 18 months, one of the things that you want to do is figure out, what are my education benefits? If I start using tuition assistance, what is my obligation? Is there a time for time? In the Army, officers, I think it's 2 years after your last class. So every class that I would take under tuition assistance as an officer, I'm extending my time 2 years. Well, make sure you understand what those are. You want to look at the degree. What degree am I going to get? What college am I going to go to? Am I going to continue my degree, or am I just going to get out and go through that? You want to evaluate your skills. You want to figure out what's going. You're beginning your career exploration. You're going to those transition assistant program workshops. And I've heard some comments of, well, they're terrible. They suck. It's like, okay, well, what was your attitude going through that transition program? I get it, because I was fortunate enough that I was in an executive one. So it was typically people that were retiring. We had a couple of chapters that were with us, and the questions were different. But I have never been to an event if I was positively engaged in that event where I didn't take something away from it. And that's the key. Do you want to get something out of that workshop? And if not, well, guess what? You're probably not going to get anything. It's not like the lights are just going to come on and somebody's going to hand you this magical manual that you follow along. You want to start finding some mentors. You want to speak to that career counselor, going through those different things. And at 6 months, this is where it really kicks in. Okay, I've seen some advice where it's like, start applying for jobs. I don't know if I like that guidance. I mean, yes, you can, but I followed that guidance. And people are like, you're 6 months out? Yeah, come talk to us when you're 90 days out, or really when you're 60 or 30 days out, because they want a person that's going to fill a seat now, especially if you're looking at like contracting jobs. they need to fill the seat or they may lose that contract. One quick side note, understand what the contracting process is, because you may get a conditional offer and that condition is on whether or not that company that you applied for gets the contract. So you may not have anything. You may be applying for their dream of getting that contract. So understand that process and just be a knowledge consumer, if you will. But at 6 months, SkillBridge. Love the program. Mentioned that I created my own opportunity. We'll talk about it a little bit more. But you need to find that SkillBridge opportunity. I've talked to a couple different people. You're going to be employed and you're going to be paid during those 6 months, 4 months that you're actually on it, 6 months out when you can do it. But that's the golden opportunity. You can go to that stretch job, like I will never get hired for this position, and then give it a shot. Figure out, is that what I want to do? Is that the industry I want to be in? Is that the company that I want to go work for? So as you're going through this whole process, you want to make sure that you take the chance when it's safe and not risk getting out, because you transition, you go to a new city, a new state, a new part of the country, a new job, a new field, and you're like, man, this sucks. Well, are you now stuck in that area? Are you stuck in that job? Because that's what it is. And at 30 days, this is where you're kind of like, okay, what do I do now? This is the crazy piece. And there can be some anxiety at this. But if you've been preparing your entire 4 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever it is, well, it shouldn't be as scary, okay? Because you've made those things. You have a solid plan. And then you have the skills to adjust if that plan doesn't work. So with preparation, I mentioned that I was going to talk about finances a lot. There are a ton of, and I got a whole slideshow, probably about 7 slides that kind of go into what are some resources. Like I said, I wanted this to be an actionable thing so you can walk out of this with the skills necessary to do what you need to do. So with our finances, you need to prepare a budget. How much are you spending? You control the money resources where you're currently at or in the future. What you can control is you don't know how much the job is going to offer you. You don't know what those things are going to happen, but you control how much you spend. So if you know how much you spend, you know what it takes to survive, if you will, or thrive as you're going forward. You really need to understand the difference between my military pay and what's going on. When I got out, it was a sticker shock. So my first tax season after, I thought everything was going to be good. I was typically, I think every year I was getting a tax return while I was in the military. And then I paid my taxes, and then I got a bill for another $10,000 or something like that. That was a significant emotional event because and people would talk about it like, oh, you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared. I was, so I could write the check for 10,000, but it was also a significant event. Like, man, that was a lot of my emergency fund was now spent towards that big bill. So make sure that you're planning for those kind of things. Understand those resources. With education, start today. Okay. I have seen too many people. I was a product of this. Like, well, I'll start it at my next job. I'll start it at this. Take a class here, take a class there. It's not going to hurt. But you need to decide, what are you going to get a degree in? Where you want to go? What are the costs that are associated with it? How long will it take to complete? Because you can't pivot in 30 days to a 4-year degree. It's just not going to work. So if the job you want requires a degree, well, you need to start and not have to try to do that pivot. Okay. Certifications is the same thing. It's great, but what are you getting? How long is it going to take you to get that process? Some you may be able to jump in 30 days. Some may require months of study. Some is years. I mean, it's one of those things that you go through and try to figure those things out. So that's a great question. Apps, I actually use a spreadsheet. So I had it broken down and there was calculations that went in there. I liked it because I could control the calculations a little bit more. I've used every dollar. There's another site that's called Personal Capital. I haven't used it in about a year and a half. But what I liked about Personal Capital is if you wanted to, you could link all of your accounts and it would take spending and net worth and it would do all those algorithms and calculations to figure out not only what is my budget, but how am I investing and where am I at and what are my goals? And it would kind of bring that holistic financial piece together. Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, Personal Capital was huge. I've kind of gotten away from it because I got a little addicted to the whole personal capital thing. It was like, where am I going now? Or where are my stocks at? And what's going on? It became like 3 times a day of refreshing and seeing what was going on. And it was like, okay, I need to step away and do it like a once a year or once every 6 months kind of thing. So I love investing. I love that. I think it's huge. It's not just investing, it's budgeting, but making sure you have a plan and going through that. So great questions. I love those kind of things. And then the last, well, not really the last thing is networking. you've heard a lot of people, if you've been attending these talks, that networking is key. And I 100% agree, because every opportunity that I've had since I've transitioned has been about networking and not applying. So I have applied for jobs after somebody presented me with an opportunity. And like I said, when I applied for my role as a faculty member, I literally got kicked out of the system. It said, you are not qualified, because I answered a question incorrectly. Because that system, because I said I hadn't completed that degree, my master's in cybersecurity, when I applied, it would have been done by the time I started. Technically, I was qualified, but the system said, no, you suck, go away, go home. I'm like, well, that's terrible. So I went to the guy, I'm like, hey, you told me to apply and I'm not qualified. So they had to go back, cancel the system the day before the position was supposed to close, got it in, and it worked out. But get that referral, get you past some of those gates. You still have to be qualified. It doesn't guarantee a job, but it takes you to somebody's desk. And that's the important part. And did you connect with that in somebody in some meaningful way? So I think that's huge, that networking piece, building those connections, growing what it is, but they need to be meaningful. It can't just be this random thing. And then the last thing, people, whatever your personal life is, okay, it doesn't matter. Okay. You have people in your life that matter to you, whether they're friends and family and pets, significant others, whoever fits into that category. There are people in your life that have gone on your military journey with you. Like my mom has been my greatest champion. Okay. Since the time that I joined, she's always been there for me in whatever capacity. I mean, literally when my daughter was born, I asked her if she would retire and move across the country to help with our daughter, because she was going to be having possibly a lot of medical complications. So can you help me? And at the drop of a hat, she's like, no problem. So I kind of adopted my mom and she helped us out with our daughter, and it just worked out really well. But whoever it is, they've come along the way and they've taken that back seat. Well, bring them back to the forefront. Maybe your significant other wants to start their own career. Maybe it's time for you to promote that career. And then how can you give them the opportunities for what's going on? So just be cognizant of that. It's not just about you anymore. And I know that it's not to be selfish or anything. It's just the way the military is. The military member is the one that kind of drives the family train, if you will. So research, okay, this is where we start transitioning into, now, how do you do this and what can go on? Knowledge is power, in my opinion. And the more knowledge you have, it can reduce anxiety. Now, when I talk about knowledge, it's not about what Facebook is telling you to think about. It's not what the Fox News or MSNBC is telling you what's going on, because that's polarizing and that can be very toxic in your life, where it's like, if you see a post and you're automatically angry, should you be looking at those posts? Is that one of those things where it's like, are you bringing that negativity into your life and creating that toxic environment when it doesn't really there? And is that even the truth that you're looking at? I mean, we talk about social engineering and information warfare and stuff like that, but that your physical reaction to that post is exactly what that post was designed to do, to incite that fear, anxiety, doubt, whatever it may be. But how do we do this? We first need to understand the job market. So as I was transitioning, this slide here is cyberseek.org. Okay, so I love this site. It provides you with a ton of information. You can see like at the national level, and there's like the Department of Labor, as you're going through your transitioning program, we'll see some of this stuff as well. So as you're looking at it, what are the jobs? What's going on? How many jobs are there? And then it leads to this kind of little linkage. Well, what are these jobs? And cybersecurity traditionally was this focused thing of, thanks, Ron, it didn't exist. Cybersecurity wasn't a thing. All of these feeder roles were things. They had curriculum, they had training, they had all of that stuff. Well, cybersecurity kind of became this random thing that's associated with it. But the problem is now we have a disconnect between HR and skill sets and employers and the cybersecurity workforce problem and all these other things, because we don't know how these things connect. Well, they do. You need to know where you fit in this ecosystem and what your worth is. And what that leads to is I grabbed one of these jobs, and this is the cybersecurity consultant. Now, this average salary, okay, the average salary, let's talk about the average. That means there's probably people making $400,000 a year, and there's probably people making $300,000 or $30,000 a year on this scale. Don't automatically assume like I'm going to make $91,000 a year if I choose this job. Where are you at? What are your skill sets? What's your experience? All of that kind of stuff. But this tells you what those things should be that are associated to this job category. And this NICE framework is very good. It's the National Initiative of Cybersecurity Education. But it takes all of these skills and it provides what the knowledge, skills, and abilities are. Go look at those, because if people are building their job ads based off of this, it's something you need to know. Well, you need to figure out, where can I get this job? Where should I be going to? So if you're not going to be in that location where you're currently at, well, where am I going to go? Okay, so you need to figure out that piece and look at a chart. So you can see California, Texas, NSA land, Florida have a lot of jobs. Well, do you want to go to a market, let's say Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, whatever, well, where there's only a couple hundred jobs and there's hundreds or thousands of people looking for those jobs? Well, maybe not, but people may not be willing to move there. So maybe you have a better opportunity, but you need to know what those things are. The other thing is pay and benefits. And this is something I think, and I was ignorant to this whole piece. It's like, what do you mean I can negotiate my salary? How does that work? Don't you just pay me whatever my rank and grade is and how much time in service I have? No, that is absolutely not how the world works once you get out. Now, if you transfer to like a GS job, okay, yes. Okay, they're on a pay scale. Some government places are going to still be on a pay scale. But for private industry, direct compensation is like your salary, your health plan, all of those different things, allowances, overtime pay. Wait, we get paid overtime? We're not just soldiers, Marines, airmen 24 hours a day? No, you get paid if you're going to be working more. Granted, there's still salary that's out there, but you need to research some of these terms and figure out what's going on. What is restricted stock? What is a relocation package, and what does that mean? We're used to that, but maybe they're only going to give you $2,000. Have you ever done a Diddy move? And you're like, well, that was really expensive. And what do you mean you're only going to pay me $2,000? But then there's potentially more important, the indirect compensation. Well, what is the culture of the company? What is my work-life balance going to be? And for me personally, that's been significantly a driving factor. I was constantly deployed. I was all over the place, all of those different things. Even if I was just in a school, I was still gone for 30 days, 60 days, 180 days. I was gone. So what does my work-life balance look like? When I was getting out, Deloitte was a possibility. I'm like, okay, what does my job look like? What does my life look like? Well, Monday, you're going to be on a plane. You'll probably get back Friday night or Saturday. You're going to work 60, 80, 90 hours a week. I'm like, that does not sound good to me. Working for Disney. Okay, that sounds cool. Well, what does that mean? And finding out what those different things are. What is that? And also career and professional development. Maybe you need to be driven by the next greatest challenge. Maybe you want that recognition. It makes me feel good when I get my Army Achievement Medal or whatever it is. If that's what drives you, that's what you need to look for. Do you want to work for the government, contractor, private sector? They're completely different entities to work for. Is that what you want? Figure that out. What is the culture? Do they have passion? Are they a values-based organization? People take for granted that the military, and there are flaws in any bureaucracy. It's just kind of the way it is. But what we need to understand is that as you're going through this process, there are a lot of different things. There are a lot of different reasons how this company came to be. They may not care about you as a person. They may care about that bottom line. Who do you want to work for? And is that the kind of culture, that realism that you want to be part of? If you're in a bad environment, do you want to start taking that up? Okay. It's just different. The other piece is, what are you going to do while you're in the service? And we're going to kind of pick up the pace here a little bit so that I can leave it for some questions. But anyways, so what are you doing now? Okay, if you're in the military and you haven't started your transition or you're 2 years out, what are you doing? Are you upskilling your new skills, reskilling, that kind of stuff? Tuition assistance, that third bullet, is this the right time? Should I be getting out of the military now? The answer may be no, and that's okay. You may need to prep yourself for that transition into the civilian world for a number of reasons. Or as you're transitioning, maybe you go into the reserves, maybe you go into the National Guard to make that a stepping stone instead of a jump from one side of the cliff to the other. I mean, you just got to be very careful of what that is. Reducing that anxiety. And then your GI Bill. If you're in the service, be very conscious of what you're using your GI Bill for. There's the ability for, I just want to get my degree done. I've used all my tuition assistance this year. I'm going to level up, or whatever they call it, the CAP program. I'm going to use my GI Bill. Well, you're not getting your housing allowance. You're not getting your full tuition rate. You're just paying for the school. You are losing benefits on that. Maybe that's the right decision, but make an informed decision as you're going through that part. And now we get into the fun stuff, right? This transition assistance program. How are you going to do things as you're moving forward? You really want to take advantage of these programs. Use your OSINT skills that are going through, which people are like, wait, why? What does OSINT have to do? Looking at websites, social media, all of these different things. I follow, and I still follow, JBLM's Joint Base Lewis McChord's Transition Assistance Program. They have an amazing program. They're up there in Seattle, so you can see Amazon, Microsoft, all of these different tech companies and what they're doing. Well, how can I leverage their opportunity for my good? That's how I came to build this, because I said Fort Huachuca had nothing. So I wanted to make sure that I had the best opportunities. I was also offered with SkillBridge, what do I want to use it for? Kind of alluded to this, but SkillBridge is that opportunity to stretch. Okay. I was offered one at Uber. Go live in San Francisco or south of San Francisco. I'm like, ooh, do I really want to look at that opportunity? Do I want to pay $4,000 a month? It's not right for me. So I didn't want to do that because I didn't really want to live in San Francisco either. It sounds great. A lot of tech people are like, oh, I got to live in San Francisco. It's the hub. It's everything. I can do the startup. I can become the next billionaire, whatever it is. It is what it is. Figure out what you want and go from there. Try to go into a company that you may not know what's going on. The Syracuse IBMF program, it's also Onward to Opportunity. Thanks, Tom. Please feel free to reach out and figure out what's going on, because it was a challenge transitioning out of Fort Huachuca. So I used this program as getting out. They paid for my training, which was really just Skillport, which a lot of military people have access to. But I used it for CEH. It was the most expensive cert available at the time. I am not a fan of that cert, especially when I took it. I think it was version 10. It was terrible. It was a terrible experience. I learned a lot studying for it, but I'm not a fan of that cert. And they've had a lot of bad reputation that's come across it. And it is what it is. It's just my personal opinion. The other one is SANS Vet Success. This was mentioned in another lecture that I was presentation that I was listening into. I've had a couple of my students actually get selected for this. It's 2 or 3 certifications, but the benefit that they found is that then they're enrolled into their career success program. They have a huge marketing campaign. They got a budget that goes along with this. So there's multiple academies that are associated with it. Feel free to check it out. And then VetTech, just got off another one of those as well. So there's so many resources available. The key is take advantage of that. So now what do we do? Okay, so we got all this, we got this information, but you're like, Paul, I'm not the person. I'm not the one that's going to do this. And I started presenting this to my students is people, well, I'm transitioning into tech. I don't know how to code, so I can't do this. Well, that imposter syndrome is real. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, really one of the first people in my family to go to college. And now here I am teaching people cybersecurity. It's like, why me? What the hell is going on? Most of the people in my industry have a PhDs. They publish, they write books, they do all of these things. They are the experts in the field. Well, why me? So you saw my certifications. I punished myself. I'm like, okay, I need to be worthy. And I associated worthiness with, I need to get that PhD credential. I need to get that certification. I need to work multiple jobs to get this. And I love that. Why not you? And we're going to get to that piece here in a second. But that's how I felt. And then as an officer, my first assignment was Space Command. So literally rocket scientists around me, like they're talking about orbital mechanics and thrust ratios. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing? How did I get here? Why me, right? Then I moved into a combat support hospital. Now I'm surrounded by surgeons and other highly educated people. My wife was a JAG officer. So it's like, we'll call them highly educated people. They're lawyers. So, well, anyways, I'll leave it at that. But how do I do this? So how did I transition to why not me? And that was, I was sitting on hiring committees, evaluating these people with these very advanced degrees, literally hundreds of publications. And then we would ask them simple questions like, well, can you describe the OSI model to me? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, but I can talk about this one little piece of the pie. And it's like, well, okay, but we need you to teach undergraduate students a lot of things. How are you going to do that? Well, and it would happen time and time again. Putting yourself out there into environments like this, like, why did they select me to do this talk? Why is anybody even listening to me? I get it, but my goal for this, it's not about people judging what I have to say. It's about maybe there's that one nugget of information. I'm not trying to change the world. I am trying to impart whatever my experience is in the hopes that one person, just one person, can take that and benefit from it. That's it. We're not trying to solve world peace. And that's the part. We put ourselves in a place where we either compare ourselves to other people, like, man, Ron's an expert speaker. He speaks all over the world. I can't believe I'm in this event. People are going to go to his conference or his presentation and not mine. Oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible. It's like, stop beating yourself up. You're typically your own worst enemy. So figure out what that is. Be confident, but don't embellish. Okay. People will quickly realize that you know what you're talking about. And if you're that silent person in the room and you're like, I'm not going to say anything because I'm going to sound stupid, please be that person, because I'm willing to bet there's other people that either have that same question, or that person that's speaking doesn't know what they're talking about. And you're like, that's not right. You're putting out bad information. Be respectful, but put it out there. So there's a link to this article that's associated with this diagram, but that's the thing. Just be who you are. You know things. You are valuable. You are a good person. Use that. And the reality is other people know things too. They know things that you don't, but that's okay. And you need to leverage what you have, know who you are, and bring that value to the table. So there's a cert for that. I linked out all of these different things. Great. Okay. This is just a snapshot of what's all available. What do you want to do? Align the skills that are associated for it. But which ones of all of these things do we choose? We have to have a plan. So you have to figure it out. The advice is in no real order, but there's a cost that's associated with it. $8,000 for a SANS certification. That includes their training and everything that's associated with it. Well, that's a big chunk of change for you to be able to do it. Even if you join one of their degree programs, it's still $5,500 per class. That's a lot. Okay, other people's money, right? And here's a list of some of the other things. They're not all created equal. I mean, I've seen where I've got a book because we were going to evaluate it for a class, and like, there's a cert, this random certs assigned to this book because the author wanted to have his own cert. It's like, well, okay, sure. What is the timeline? And we'll jump to this next thing. But it takes time to study for that. So you want to make sure, okay? You want to figure out what is that time commitment? Do you have the time? And you want to be successful. You don't want to go for a cert. I think it was $650 is what the cert costs. If you don't take the SANS course, it's like $2,000. But if I spend $750 and I fail, what does that mean? Do I have a backup plan? Am I buying the insurance that comes along with it? I'll be honest. The last cert I took, it was a stretch cert. I failed it. I mean, it hurt my heart. It hurt my ego, but I didn't prepare like I normally did. I didn't have time. It wasn't there. And it was exploit writing. I'm not a coder. And I don't understand the stack and all these things, but it's okay to fail. Don't be like, oh, I'm a failure. It's like, no, you didn't prepare enough. Did you learn something? I learned a ton from that course. And I do not regret it whatsoever. And I pushed the boundaries on that one. We talk about job requirements. So here's the fancy chart for the 8570, 8140 kind of stuff. Align the job with align the skills with the job that you want. Job posting, it lists what you need. So find those dream jobs, figure out what it is, where you want to go, and put that information forward. Continuous learning, upskilling, reskilling, but degrees. We'll go into this here. Not all programs are created equal. The Centers of Academic Excellence in Cyber Operations, there's a listing of these schools. Go check them out. The NSA has already vetted these schools for you, and they meet some things. Figure out all that kind of stuff. Figure out what's going on. Where do I want to go to school? There's a map. There's hundreds of institutions for cyber defense that are listed here. Cyber operations just kind of takes it to a new thing. Do I need a specialized program or certificate? Maybe I don't need a degree. Maybe I can just get a certificate, like a graduate, undergraduate certificate, not a certification, in one of these areas to upskill, to get that, to complement my psychology or social engineering or whatever the degree is. I need a different skill set. And then other people's money. This is the money slide right here, if you will. Use your military benefits. I messed up the veteran readiness and employment used to be Voc Rehab. The DoD scholarship program and those 3 links highlighted there, gold. $25,000 in your pocket, 100% of your tuition paid for. You get a guaranteed job with the government afterwards. There's summer internship programs. It is crazy when you're looking at those kind of things. So just make sure you figure out what it is. How are you going to do this? But employers, they have it. Go get a job and let them pay for it. The University of Arizona just started with Disney, Walmart, Target, a bunch of corporate partners for our applied computing, cyber operations, Intel information operations programs, because that's what it is. Let other people pay for your education. But then you might be like, but Paul, if I don't have the education, how do I get the job? I get it. But you need to figure out, how do you leverage the benefits? Because I have a lot of students that are like, I'm just going to get my master's. Okay, that's great. Who's going to pay for that? Well, I am. Or I'm going to take debt. It's like, well, why don't you try to go get a job first over your summer? And then if you don't get a job, sure, come back to get your master's. But why don't you find somebody else to get the experience and the money to pay for those kind of things? So we're almost at the end of this talk, because this is all things. But what else can you do? This is a continuous learning field. It is one of those things where you need to figure out what you want to do, and it's super broad. You can't know everything about all of the things that are within cybersecurity. Focus on one and then branch out in different areas. And once you get a very solid foundation of what's going on, things are going to make sense. It'll be easier to learn, kind of like a language. Supposedly, once you learn one, I speak English and bad English. That's about it. So I don't have all those other things. I've been told that a programming language, once you know one, it's easier to pick up others. You learn a foreign language, easier to pick up others. Hands-on experience, continuous learning, organizations and opportunities. But these slides are all of those things. So I have a slide dedicated just to the research that I talked about. Check these out. Career One Stop, Military One Source. It's not just about transitioning jobs, budgeting. They're amazing resources. Our government has put in a lot of work or paid people a lot of money to provide these resources for you. Please use them. Then we have reading. So a couple of things. Month of Lunches series helps you with like programming languages, bite-sized things, 30, 45-minute little blocks of instruction with hands-on skills at the end. Humble bundles, $12, $15, and you can get like the top 10 cybersecurity books or the top 10 malware reverse engineering stuff. Cybersecurity career master plan. Bought it kind of on a whim. I was talking to John Helmus, one of the authors, and I'm like, let's check this out. It sounded good. I saw them doing a talk on it, and it is a really good guide to get you kind of like started on that journey. And they have some really good stuff. Human Hacking by Chris Hednagi. He's an amazing individual. He is just such a genuinely good guy. He just recently became he teaches our social engineering course. Just such a good human. He's like, he will take the time out of his extraordinary busy schedule to sit down and have that conversation. This OSU cybersecurity canon, ton of books. I mean, it just lists you the books. Read industry reports. So whether they are, I linked 3 different ones here. Understand what's going on, but what are those resources that are free? So O'Reilly, go to your library. Those things that you used to have to go to, they're typically online now, and you can download things. A lot of good free audiobooks, stuff like that. Blogs. Here's a list. Feel free. I'm going to kind of flip through these slides. A couple of these we talked about. Black Hills Information 5-year path. Okay. All of these things are linked. Everything's there. Check them out. Throw it in. If you're commuting, listen to something along the way. Okay. Try to make some value out of that long commute of what's going on. Use your training resources. So you have the Fed VTE, Black Hills Information Security are so big on giving back to the community and reducing those barriers to entry into cybersecurity. They have what's called your Pay What You Can, Pay What You Want series of education. 16 hours of really good training with hands-on labs and everything. And you don't have to pay anything. You just reach out to them and say, hey, I'm a new student. I'm trying to get in here, figure out what it is. And if you can't afford it, give it back so that they can continue to provide those opportunities to people. Here's some cost associated one. Not all content is created equally. I'm not endorsing any of these things, but they're there for your use. Here's a bunch of ranges and stuff that you can go through. Organizations. Now, be part of organizations. Get involved. And what I mean by that is like HTCIA or something that's in the field that you want to go to. They have some free talks. They'll bring people together. Just figure out who they are and how can you get involved. You could say, well, I can't afford to go to this conference. Volunteer at the conference. They're always looking for volunteers. And typically, they will pay for your entry into that and maybe pay for some food while you're there. And you get to shake hands with the people that are presenting. Get involved. InfraGard, B-Sides, all of these things, please feel free to check them out. Here's a list of budgeting things. Your bank, whichever one that you go to, may have a bunch of resources that are associated with it. Figure out what you want. Get involved in conferences. Like I said, volunteer. Or, just like this one, check out YouTube, check out where these talks were, go back and reference. Maybe last year's content is all about what's going on. Speak at conferences. This is probably the third time I've spoken, first time in this kind of modality. But speak, you have something to offer. Even if it's like you solved this one little thing and you're really proud of it, be proud of it, own it. Even if 100 other people said the exact same thing. I mean, I mentioned in Ron's, one of his presentations, I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, and John talked about that too. And I'm the last one to present what's going on. It's okay. It's okay. Get that information out there. It's a different take, a different perspective. Figure out what's going on. So some clothing thoughts. You own your transition experience. This is your journey. It's not Paul's journey. It's not anybody else's. Own it. You are responsible. I've seen too many people like, well, they didn't do this for me or they didn't do that. It's like, no, they are not responsible. Hold yourself accountable. Own that journey. Your cybersecurity journey is similar to your transition experience. You own that as well, okay? You are the one that is going to take this. Are you going to get into pen testing, forensics, threat intelligence, whatever it may be? How are you going to take that path and what are you going to do? There isn't a path. There isn't a right path. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to take that winding road as you go back. You need to figure it out. You need to see what's going on, okay? It's okay. And it's okay to fail, take a step back, and then move forward. It's one step in front of the other. It's trying to go there. It's that 25-mile road march, and you're like, oh, this sucks. You don't get there by taking one big leap. You take multiple steps along the way. You take breaks. You may get injured. You may need to ask for help. That's okay. This is probably, the cybersecurity industry is there's problems, don't get me wrong, but it's a welcoming community. They want you to succeed because they can't do everything. And if you run into that person like, I can do everything, walk away from that person because they probably can't. And it's probably going to be a negative situation. Find those people that want to encourage you and bring you forward. Take advantage of opportunities. Talking to somebody in a parking lot. Like I said, I saw somebody, I mentioned something, and I'm like, hey, what is this thing? And if you're not prepared for those opportunities, that's the part that sucks. I mentioned manager to Kroger. Well, as soon as I got to Korea, I got a phone call. My dream job was like working for the Boy Scouts of America in their like national headquarters. I got offered the job 30 days after I got to Korea. It's like, well, that's over. That's okay. But it was a better experience. I believe that door was closed at that time to get me to Korea, to lead me to the next place that was going on. But if you see an opportunity, take advantage of it and be prepared for those opportunities. Otherwise, it's not going to work out for you. Be humble, willing to ask for help. Military people suck at this, and men in general typically suck at asking for directions, asking for help. That's kind of a true thing. I'm guilty of that. But be humble. You're not going to know everything. And that can be taken too far. But if you're humble and you're genuine and you're willing to ask for help, people are going to help you. We are a team. And that's something that I see as we go forward. It's a journey. Okay. This isn't like I'm going to jump in. I need to be like Paul. I need to be like Ron. I need to be like Tom. No, it's a journey. What is your path? What is your journey? And it doesn't stop. If you don't like continuous learning, you don't like that you will never master everything, you need to find a different field. This is changing on a daily, minute, second basis. It is crazy like that's going through there. It's just nuts, but it's fun. It's exciting. It's adventurous. And then take care of yourself and take care of those around you. It is easy to get burnt out in this career field. It doesn't matter. Like me in academia, I burnt myself out. I am there. I'm tapped out. I have to step away from things. But we always say yes. We always want to jump on the next mission. We want to be involved. We want to change the world. You need to figure that out. Okay, whatever your path is, whatever you want to do, you need to solve that. And with that, have fun. It is a great journey. It is a great field. It is an awesome situation to be here. Own your transition journey. The civilian world is great. I love it. Glad to be out. I love my time in the military, but it is time to move on. So with that, sorry on the bottom, but I put my LinkedIn and everything in there. I don't know if we have time for questions. I think I'm right on 9:54, 4 minutes over. Anything you need from me, please do not hesitate to reach out. I threw my email on there. I may regret that one, but it is what it is. But reach out to me. I love to help. I love to communicate. I don't have all the answers, but I'm here to help. I will point you in the right direction. I will try to connect you with somebody that I know. it's a team effort. It's not about us, but if you don't reach out, you're not going to get that help. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest. We'll talk soon.